My Patreon members' current terminal subclade is I-FT143851, which dates approximately to 587 BCE according to family tree DNA age estimates. So right around the transition from the end of the Bronze Age into the early Iron Age. Now, he didn't have much information regarding his patrilineal ancestors, but he did know that they did come from Germany to the USA at some point. I also want to note that his surname has origins in southern Germany. I was scouring over my Patreon members' STR matches, and I came across a Y37 match who had only tested up to 37 STRs. And this match had an earliest known ancestor that had the same surname as my Patreon member. I did some research online regarding this ancestor, and I found a family tree for him that went all the way back to the 1700s to the commune of Sufflenheim in Rhine, Alsace, France. Now, this commune, Sufflenheim, is only 3.1 miles away from the major Rhine River. Now, Alsace, France, has a strong German influence and was even part of Germany off and on over the centuries. As you can see in the following map, it borders southern Germany, which helps corroborate his surname having southern Germany origins. Now, I really believe that my Patreon member shares a genealogical time frame common patrilineal ancestor with this Y37 match. So I do believe that my Patreon members' patrilineal forefathers were living in that general Rhine River region bordering southwestern Germany and northeastern France during that time period. Based on that information, one might automatically incorrectly assume that my Patreon members' patrilineal forefathers can be linked to West Germanic tribes that entered that region. In this video, I'm going to hopefully provide compelling evidence to the contrary, and will hopefully provide an alternative theory for how his patrilineal ancestors entered that region. A new preprint was recently released titled Steppe Ancestry in Western Eurasia and the Spread of the Germanic Languages. In that preprint, there was a lot of interesting information regarding the origins of West Germanic tribes. To quote the preprint, quote, "The spread of West Germanic to Germany, the Netherlands, and Britain appears to be closely related to populations migrating from the Jutland Peninsula," end quote. If my Patreon members' patrilineal forefathers were indeed originally West Germanic and part of West Germanic migrations, then I would expect to see modern distributions and ancient DNA evidence supporting this, but I don't. What I see is a strong correlation with Sweden and the Viking Age for my Patreon members' subclades. In the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World, there was a very interesting graphic. In that graphic, the majority of the Rhine River is shaded green, meaning it was subject to Viking raids, settlement, and trading during the Viking Age. My Patreon members' patrilineal ancestors literally living within just a few miles of the Rhine River. I'm going to propose the alternative theory that his patrilineal forefathers arrived in that region with the Vikings, either as a result of raiding, trading, or settlement. Let us now look at ancient DNA and modern distributions for evidence of this theory. My Patreon member belongs to one of IDF29's smaller child branches, labeled IY14628, which dates approximately to the late Neolithic at 1874 BCE, according to family tree DNA age estimates. As of April 15th, 2024, in the family tree DNA database, only 35 individuals have tested positive for this very small child branch of IDF29. That being said, though, 56.52% of all people that listed an earliest known patulal country of origin list Sweden. Furthermore, I don't see anybody listing Germany or the Netherlands. If this branch truly had a strong West Germanic correlation, then I would expect to see a completely different modern distribution. Let us now take a look at the ancient DNA evidence. My Patreon member has 3 ancient connections that connect to him through the IY16449 subclade, which dates to the Bronze Age, according to family tree DNA age estimates. Now, this is a very old connection, but that being said, what you're going to see is a correlation with Sweden and the Viking Age. You are not going to see a correlation with the southern Jutland Peninsula, where the West Germanic tribes originated from. And you're not going to see a correlation with West Germanic tribal migrations. The first ancient DNA connection comes from the 2023 study, Genetic History of East Central Europe in the First Millennium CE. In the family tree DNA database, the sample is labeled Prus-Gdański-483. In the study, he's referred to as PCA 0483. He lived sometime between 100 and 300 CE. He is associated with the Wilbark culture. He was discovered in Prus-Gdański, Pomerania, Poland. In the following map from the study, you can see that Prus-Gdański is located in the very north of Poland. To quote the recently released preprint in regards to the Wilbark culture, quote, "In contrast to these Western and Northern Germanic-speaking populations, we find the Wilbark population from Poland to be primarily of Eastern Scandinavian ancestry, supporting a Swedish origin for East Germanic groups," end quote. So here we see a Sweden correlation with this ancient DNA connection from Poland. The next ancient DNA connection comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. In the family tree DNA database, the sample is labeled Bogove D. In the study, he was referred to as VK367. He lived during the Viking Age, sometime between 900 and 1000 CE. He was discovered in Bogove, Langeland, Denmark. The island of Langeland in the following map is the one that is shaded in red. So here we see also for this ancient DNA connection, a Viking Age connection, not a West Germanic connection. The last ancient DNA connection also comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. The sample is labeled Salme 1-3 in the family tree DNA database. He's also referred to as VK506 in the study. He lived sometime between 652 and 775 CE. He was discovered in Salme, Saaremaa, Estonia. He was part of that famous Viking double ship burial. Saaremaa is an island in the Baltic Sea off the coast of mainland Estonia. To quote the supplemental information from the study, quote, "Isotopes value in human dental enamel and bones show that the warriors buried in the mass graves in the ships came from central Sweden," end quote. So once again, here we see a correlation with Sweden and the Viking Age. Now I understand that my Patreon members' Bronze Age patrilineal connections to these ancient DNA samples is very distant and long ago. And I also understand that his terminal subclade dating to the pre-Roman Iron Age is also very old. So I do understand that any theory constructed regarding the migrations of his patrilineal forefathers is going to be a bit speculative. But that being said, whether I'm looking at modern distributions or ancient DNA connections, I do not see a West Germanic correlation. My best educated guess, albeit speculative, the most plausible explanation to me would be a Viking Age migration to that area along the Rhine River. What information can be learned from my Patreon members' STR results? Well, as I already mentioned earlier in the video, he most likely has a genealogical time frame connection with that Y37 match with the earliest known ancestor with the same surname as his. So I feel getting him upgraded to Big Y700 should be priority number one. My Patreon member also has one Y67 match and 5 other Y37 matches, albeit they might not connect to him within a genealogical time frame. They might connect to him more recently in time than his current terminal subclade. So if I were him, I would pursue getting these people upgraded as well. Thanks for watching.